Absolutely. I think, and we're not going to make an announcement now today, but maybe soon. And we definitely need to get into the crossover market. I think right now is like 78% of all sales right now. The small crossover and that mid-size crossover segment is booming, and it has been for the past couple of years. So we'd be dumb not to look into that, and maybe in the future you might see something like that come out of here. We've talked about it before, but no official announcement.
All right, so today on the Plugged In podcast, we are interviewing Jeff Holland, and he's the Director of Public Relations for Karma Automotive. It's an electric car company based in California. Would you mind telling us a brief history of Karma Automotive?
Yeah, it is kind of a brief history. We're a startup company. I mean, kind of semi-technically a startup company, but we've been in business since about 2014. We incorporated as Karma Automotive after we purchased assets from the old Fisker company that went out of business. So we purchased all the tooling and the machines and the design and the vehicles that was actually called a Fisker Karma at first, and we changed the name of the company to Karma Automotive, and our first vehicle was called the Revero GT. So we brought all the tooling from Europe and built our own manufacturing production facility here in Moreno Valley, California, and then established our headquarters in Irvine, California. So we assemble and produce vehicles, and we've been doing it, selling and servicing them for about 6 or 7 years now, both in the United States, and we've got a few dealer points in Europe as well. We have about close to 40 dealerships worldwide. We have a couple even in the Middle East and South America. So we've been fairly well established here. We don't sell that many cars. We're kind of a boutique manufacturer of the Revero GT, and we just announced a new car called the GS6 and the GS6. So we have two different powertrains, propulsion systems. One is our traditional propulsion system that uses a BMW 3-cylinder 1.5 liter turbocharged motor that powers a generator, and the generator powers the battery pack, a 28 kilowatt hour battery pack that produces the electricity and the power to the rear wheels of the car. It's kind of a grand touring car. It's a large sedan, kind of Tesla Model S size or Lucid Air size, but it's a fun car to get out on the road. It's got about 360 miles of full range if you've got a full gas tank and a full charge on the battery. And we just announced our GS6, which is our first all-electric car that's coming out later this year, and more details on that to come. But we expect to get 300 plus miles of range out of that on a pretty big battery pack. So we're working on that, and we'll get that out for deliveries before the end of the year.
Wow, so that's pretty interesting. And I think the one thing that people just find why they find Karma as such an alluring company is the original Fisker Karma designed by Henrik Fisker, which is such a good looking car. So will Karma retain, or will the GS6 retain styling from the Fisker Karma as like the Revero GT did?
Yeah, basically, I mean, it's kind of a timeless design. It's a beautiful design. If you haven't seen the car, hopefully you've got some pictures you can share with the audience at some point, or just look it up at karmaautomotive.com. But it's a beautiful car. It's stunning. I've had one. I've been at the company for about 4 months. And so on my press car that I've been driving around, it's amazing the looks that you get from people just driving down the road or on the highway, people holding up their camera phones, taking pictures, circling around the car, parking it. I get a lot of comments that it looks like an Aston Martin. And Henrik, it's no secret that Henrik was an Aston Martin designer, so he took a lot of that, his design theme and his design philosophy, and put that into the Karma. But it's a beautiful car inside and out, and it looks fast just sitting still. So it gets a lot of looks. Got 22-inch wheels on it, so pretty big, and then the fender flares are enormous. But it's a lot of fun to drive, and it's kind of a grand touring car. We just did an event rally called the Gold Rush Rally at the end of last year that we had a number of supercars, McLarens and Ferraris, and we were included in that group. And we drove from Los Angeles up through Monterey, San Francisco, up to Coeur d'Alene, and then back in kind of it wasn't really a cannonball run, but there was some speeding tickets given out on the trip to a number of different marks. So we had a lot of fun with that. But it's more kind of an open road type vehicle. It's not so much a track vehicle, but it's a lot of fun to drive.
Perfect.
Yes.
So, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. So I guess one question. So you work at Karma, you get a press car. Would you mind telling us about that process?
Well, so I've been in the automotive industry for about 20 years, and I've worked at other companies, General Motors, Suzuki, Mitsubishi, even Bollinger Motors, startup electric company, and a company called Electromechanica. But traditionally, the OEMs, the manufacturers that have vehicles, will house them in various press fleets around the country. So they're in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles or Detroit, New York, Miami, San Francisco. And the process is, and this is a great business model that started maybe 20 years ago, that when a reporter or a journalist or an outlet needs a vehicle, they've got these local central hubs that they can tap and say, I need whatever the vehicle is, or they're put on some sort of a rotation by the press fleet vendors that houses pretty much everybody's newest and best vehicles, a couple of them each in different trim levels. So when a journalist needs to write a story about it, they check it out, drive it for a week or two, and then put their stories together. And then the story comes out on the drive impression. So when you see those in magazines and online, that's how it happens. Some of them are just put in a constant rotation where they get a new vehicle that shows up at their house or their office once a week or once every couple weeks, depending on who the outlet is, to get a vehicle. And then they just write stories for either the local papers or whatever. A nice cat. So anyway, that's how the process works. And we have a small marketing fleet at Karma that we try to be judicious about who we give it to, since we don't have that many vehicles out there in the field. You know, we're not as big as GM or Ford, but we kind of keep them farmed out on a pretty regular basis.
So like, I know that it's quite like you're quite new to Karma, but can you tell us a little bit more about the atmosphere at Karma, like compared to the other companies? Is it quick? How is it? Is it like high pressure?
No, it's I mean it's kind of behaves like a startup. So I've been at a big company like General Motors. Even Suzuki and Mitsubishi were pretty big companies, and you had report outs that you had to go back to Japan on a pretty regular basis. There was so at a smaller startup, and again, I've been at a few. Bollinger and Electromechanica weren't that different than Karma. It's really fast moving, fast paced, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm about the products. Everything's kind of new. Every day's new because you're kind of working on something that you hadn't worked on before. We've got a number of people from outside automotive that work for the company. More kind of our marketing guy is from kind of the fashion design world in clothing. And so we've got some digital marketing folks that are outside of the organization or came from outside of the organization or outside of automotive. So there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm for getting things done. The process is a lot quicker. You know, my boss sits right next to me, and the whole engineering team is right there in-house. The design team is right there at headquarters as well. So if you need something, you just walk down the hallway into somebody's office or at a cube and just, you know, answer your question or get your questions answered. And then you're off and running. You don't need to call big meetings and wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get answers on budget items and things like that. So it's pretty efficient and it's pretty fast paced.
So just onto the GS6. So we're talking around over 300 miles per charge for your first all electric car, around 80K MSRP. So comparing that to the Revero GT, which I believe starts at 135K, given that this one will be significantly cheaper, will it be less of a premium, more kind of a mid-sized sedan, or will it be have the similar body style? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, basically the GS6, it's a naming convention more than anything, and a pricing strategy. So we've reduced the price, but we haven't decontented the vehicle. We were just able to realize economies of scale through higher production numbers, higher throughput. We did a big exercise on our bill of materials and got some costs out of the system, some more efficiencies in the manufacturing process, and then battery costs have come down significantly in the years that we've been in business. So all that we kind of looked at our pricing that we've had traditionally, like you said, starting at about 144, but the transaction price was even north of that. It was transacting at like 155, 165 once you load it up with all the bells and whistles that everybody seemed to want in it. So it was in this kind of hyper premium segment alongside Rolls-Royce and Aston Martins and Bentley and things like that. So when we looked at what costs we could remove out of the system and in the supply chain, we came up with a price, at least that we've announced for the GS6, the electric version, at $79,900. which is about half of what the Revero GT was transacting at. We want to keep the Revero GT name, and we put out a release about a month ago that said we're going to take that mark or that name, upscale for future variants of it, and make it more of kind of a custom coach build type of a vehicle where people can come in and pick their own colors and trims and leathers and suedes and things like that, and their own color palette, and work with them kind of on a one-on-one basis with the design team to build their own vehicle. So that's what's going to happen to the Revero GT nameplate. The GS6 is essentially going to be the same vehicle, just at a reduced price and a different name that we're going to be coming out with. We just started production on the first run of the GS6s about a week ago at the plant in Moreno Valley. So we should have deliveries ready for people in not too long from now. If you order them either online or order them from one of our 26 or 27 dealerships around the country right now.
Interesting. So the Revero GT, you'll keep the name, but as for the existing car at the moment, will it be discontinued in favor of the GS6 and GS6?
We're still going to build a few of them. Again, we don't build that many anyway, but we're still going to build a few Revero GTs this year, and it'll be kind of on a one-on-one customer basis if somebody wants to really load something up, and we'll work with them on kind of the pricing structure and what that's going to look like. But it'll be kind of a tweener year for the Revero GT until we get to new platforms and new types of vehicle variants that we'll be producing in the not too distant future.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, so with the GS6, like I said, I'm not sure how much you can answer this question, but there's really not all that much information of what the car is going to look like. So I'm assuming there's going to be changes from the Revero in the new GS6. Is that going to be correct?
Most of the changes are going to be under the skin. Again, it's a lot of carryover. We just kind of redid the Revero GT maybe a year and a half ago. So it's essentially a brand new car. We've got, when we can't say too much about it, but things under the skin in the propulsion system, things like inverters, batteries, things like that you don't really necessarily see aesthetically outside the vehicle, but there will be more efficiencies put in the vehicle in addition to like a completely new powertrain system. So that's the primary difference. Design-wise, it'll be essentially the same.
And I don't think that's bad because it's already such a good looking car.
Yeah, we think if somebody's coming out of a Tesla Model 3 lease after 3 or 4 years and they want to get into a similar behaving vehicle, a similar sized vehicle, but we think at least a lot better looking vehicle, and something that doesn't look like another Model 3, because I think they just had a redesign, they called it, but it was very subtle. If you've seen the new one out there on the road, it still looks like a Tesla Model 3. So if somebody's looking for a little bit different styling wise, but still has kind of the same handling dynamics and the same kind of buttons, bells and whistles, and they want to be all electric or at least a hybrid electric, they can get into a Karma. And I think it's right around the same price point, like right around that $79,000, $80,000 price range, depending on the battery pack that you want and the range that you want to get. But I know they reduced. It's funny, we came out with our pricing announcement back in November, I think, for the GSE, and Tesla reduced their price from, I don't know what it was, 80 down to 70 something, or maybe 69.9. And then Lucid Air came out with their pricing announcement. It was all in the same week, and it wasn't like, I wouldn't call it a pricing war, but it was interesting that it all happened after we announced our price. They both announced their price and came down a little bit in the same neighborhood. So it's a similar, from a cost standpoint, it's almost the same cost. It just kind of pick your color, pick the vehicle that you want. And if you want to look a little bit different and maybe have the only Karma in your neighborhood, or at your country club, or wherever you go driving around, it gets a lot of looks, and it's a pretty unique looking vehicle.
Yeah. So on the topic, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Tesla's become, at least in my neighborhood, I live in San Diego, I work in Irvine, but they're all over the place. It's almost like Toyota, Camrys or whatever now. Everybody's got one. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then when you were talking about the people ordering the car, like, who is a typical customer? Are they like car enthusiasts, electric car enthusiasts? Have they driven, like, general?
It's changed. I think it used to be, I don't think they were so concerned, when the price point was what it was, you had a very well-heeled, 350,000 household income, probably a little bit older, later in life. And the vehicle, the Revero GT at least, was probably one of 6 or 7 vehicles that somebody might have owned, and maybe takes it out a couple times a year, wants to go show it off to his friends, go to a car club or something like that. But it was more kind of the uniqueness that it was like a unicorn type vehicle that nobody saw, and you're the only one in the city that has one. And so I think it was more for kind of bragging rights and prestige than anything, and even more so than just being electric, although that made it even more unique, the fact that it was a hybrid electric as well. With the new customer that we're going to have at this new price point is somebody probably a little bit younger and probably moving from the standard segment into maybe more of a near luxury type segment, because the price point, it's still expensive, but it's not this unobtainium type of a thing where it costs as much as a house in some states. So at that price point, it's going to be a little bit younger, and it's probably going to be somebody who's going to use the vehicle as their primary vehicle, back and forth to work and to go get groceries and do whatever they normally do with it. So it's going to be a little bit different, and we've kind of been through training with our dealer network to kind of cater to those types of people, because it's a different customer that's going to be coming into the showrooms now than what we used to have.
Yeah, 100%. And is that a 79,900 price before or after the federal tax credit of 7,500?
So that's before the tax credit. So 79.9 is the manufacturer suggested retail price, and depending on where you live, I think, excuse me, in California, you can almost get about $10,000 off of that with the federal rebates and the tax incentives, and depending on your income level and things like that, who you are, it can come down another 10 grand almost, depending on where you live.
Yeah, I think the best state's actually Colorado. I think they get like 12 or 13K off in some cases.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's
oh, that's
crazy.
good.
Yeah,
I think
5,000 state and then 7,500 federal. Yeah.
And I think Gavin Newsom's our governor here in California, and he's going to be pretty aggressive with the new administration. Biden coming in, there may be some additional federal credits. We'll see where it goes, but I mean, it could be, the incentives could grow from what it is now.
So looking at the bigger picture, and I know that you're moving the Rivero GT to a more personalized type of thing. Have you ever talked with the team or anything, or any information about creating a more economy sort of higher volume vehicle in the future after the GS6?
Absolutely. I think, and we're not going to make an announcement now today, but maybe soon. And we definitely need to get into the crossover market. I think right now is like 78% of all sales right now. The small crossover and that mid-size crossover segment is booming, and it has been for the past couple of years. So we'd be dumb not to look into that, and maybe in the future you might see something like that come out of here. We've talked about it before, but no official announcement. But we would look to that, and then maybe something like a model, Model 3 size type of a vehicle. But we're looking at everything for the future product plan. I think we need to get through the GS6 launch right now, and the GSE coming later this year, and then we'll talk about future vehicle variants in the future.
And on the other side of things now, sorry to be dragging you back into future vehicles, but I remember it was 2019, I think you showed off the GT, the Karma GT, designed by Pininfarina. So what's this like? Do you have any plans to bring that to production in the next 2 to 3 years, say? And if you do bring it to production, will it be available? I know the concept was a plug-in hybrid, but will it be available in all electric form too? Maybe a Tesla Roadster rival?
Well, what we're working on right now is a couple different variants from a propulsion standpoint. We've got our extended range electric vehicle, which is really a series hybrid type of application. We've got the all electric version coming. And then we also showed off right around the same time as the Pininfarina design study, which is what that vehicle was. We showed off a number of different types of platforms. We call it the E-Flex platform that we intend on selling to other outside companies that may be looking for a platform configuration or platform configurations, depending on the type of vehicle. It could be a fleet vehicle, commercial, light duty, truck, could be car. And we had 1, 2, and 4 motor variants. And the 4 motor variant we had in our SC2 concept vehicle that we showed off last year, right after that Pininfarina GT vehicle that we showed off. But that had like 1,100 horsepower, all electric, 4 motors, and it was a real ripper. And we have a couple of them that are, we call them mule vehicles that are running around headquarters right now. So the viability of some of those vehicles, that's what we're working on, and not just for ourselves internally at Karma to perhaps use on future vehicle variants. We would look to sell those to other companies maybe looking to get into the space that didn't want to spend the time and the money on their own platform development. We've got that kind of ready to go off the shelf if that's something that people are looking into and want to kind of get ahead of the development time. Like you're seeing Bollinger, they're doing everything kind of in-house, but they're learning on their own, and it's just taking exponentially longer time to get something like that when you're doing your own ground-up vehicle than taking something that somebody's already done. We have over, I think, 2 million test miles on our existing platforms just because we've been selling cars. They've been out on the roads in real world conditions and situations for a number of years now. So we have all that data, we have all that information. We went through the growing pains early on, and now we've kind of perfected it into a real viable type of a platform and a vehicle. And we've got that experience that people can tap into. They don't have to go through the same kind of pains that we did. So we think it's a good option.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, it's funny you mentioned the SC2 as well, because I remember posting that. It's one of my top posts on my Instagram page. I think it got over 15,000 likes. The response to it was phenomenal. Like, yeah, it went viral. Like, people were really like, it is a stunning
It's
looking
a
car.
cool looking car. It's got scissor doors, 2-door, kind of a coupe, almost like the Tesla just came out with their Roadster, or is coming out. I guess it's delayed, but similar kind of proportions to that. But anything you get at like a 2-seat, like little Roadster sports car, all electric with scissor doors. I mean, it's a gorgeous looking car.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I've seen the SC1 in person. That's also pretty incredible as well.
Yeah, the SC1's kind of making its global tour right now, but that's they're both pretty stunning looking cars.
Yeah, so on the topic of the platform you mentioned, and I'm gonna transpire this into something else. As for someone who wants to invest in Karma, they might find that pretty interesting that you have your own platform out there that could potentially be sold to other manufacturers. Is there a possibility of Karma becoming an IPO in the near future?
I think there's always a possibility. There's been a lot of interest here in the SPAC deals. I think Faraday Future just signed one a couple days ago. A lot of companies have gone that route of kind of this blank check, we call them blank check companies. So yeah, we've had interest, and we're obviously looking into it and seeing if there's a fit out there that that could work for us in some sort of situation, whether that's IPO or SPAC or some kind of public entity at some point. We've got strong funding right now from our parent company, and it's been interesting. I worked for a little bit at Jaguar Land Rover on a contract basis, and Tata owns them, and they're a company out of India, but they were extremely hands off. They kind of trusted everybody here in the US and over in Europe to kind of do their own thing and make up their own marketing plans and cater to the region how they saw fit. And Tata was really just hands off, and that's kind of how our parent company is they trust us to do the right thing, and they trust us to know the market here in the U.S. and the sales points we have in Europe as well, and that's been nice. There's no kind of real kind of overwatch that we have or kind of report outs that we have to do that is too intrusive into getting the business done. So that's one nice thing about Karma, or another nice thing about Karma.
Yeah, I think the laissez-faire approach is definitely best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I've seen it the other way at other companies, and it's a little bit clunky.
So you mentioned your sales points. So I think one thing for someone who's interested in a Karma is who may not be familiar with the brand. They might say, I want this car, but how do I get it serviced? Would you mind us talking about that? Because I know there's dealerships, and there's one in Charlotte where I live, but does that operate as a service center as well?
Yeah, it depends on the dealership, but so most of our dealerships, we have one company store here in Newport Beach, California, and that's a factory store. The rest of them are all dualed up dealerships, depending on the city that we're in. We're in, I think, 26 in the U, or 24, 25 in the US, and a couple in Canada. And so, yeah, they've got, I think all of them have full service departments. We go through the service training with all the dealerships and all the sales points that we have. So they not only sell the vehicles there, but they can service them. Ideally, and for the most part, most people that do buy a Karma live close to the dealership. Now, there may be instances where somebody moved out of state or moved to a different city or something like that further away. And we've got ways to accommodate them for either mobile service or different deals that we have with regional service points in the United States and Canada that can get out and help them, or they can take it into a service dealership to get anything that they need done. But the good thing about Karma, a unique thing, I guess, and with electric vehicles as a whole, we've got a lot of over-the-air services that we can do, and we get all the remote diagnostics. We have an area in our headquarters that looks like mission control. It's got a number of different television screens, and it monitors all the cars that we have out on the road. So a lot of times we know something's wrong with the vehicle before the owner would know something's wrong with the vehicle. Again, a lot of times they'll park the car for long periods of times. Maybe the air goes down in the tires, or the battery, the 12-volt battery needs recharging. So we can send the owner a note and say, hey, you may want to go in, start your car up, just kind of turn it over, or put some air in the tires before you take it anywhere, just for safety. And it's not, it's not personal information intrusive, but it is vehicle diagnostics. And again, a lot of times we can do over-the-air updates with the smart cabin that we do have in the vehicles, so we can help them out that way too. Because there's a lot of technical things that are kind of run by the CPU, the brains of the car, that we can do remotely. We don't have to physically send somebody out to do it anymore. And with electric cars, you probably know there's a lot less things that can go wrong with those, because there's a lot fewer moving parts in the electric cars versus some of the traditional cars.
Yeah. So when you mentioned the electric car, you also have the 3-cylinder BMW engine in there. How's the reliability on them? Are there reports of issues with them? Because it's for someone who's interested, they're like, I might want to do this, but it's a BMW engine. What's the reliability like on them?
BMW's, that's a motor that's been around for a little while. So they have a lot of data on the reliability of that vehicle. It's one of their power horse vehicles that they've had in a number of different vehicles in Europe. They use it for the BMW i8.
Yeah,
in the same kind of configuration. I wouldn't say it's bulletproof, but it's a pretty stalwart engine compared to what we did have. We started with or at least Fisker did, with an Ecotec General Motors 4-cylinder motor that was terrible. And so when we upgraded to the BMW, we saw a lot of improvement, both in ride and handling, noise and vibration, harshness, some of that stuff that you look for in engine tuning. And then the performance figures were night and day versus that earlier variant, or we call it the 1.0 vehicle. But if you drove them back to back, it's a noticeable difference between what we did have and what we have now.
Yeah. So I'm assuming Karma did a lot of R&D with different types of motors, like Chevy did with the Volt.
Yeah, I wasn't here then, but I'm sure that they vetted that and they went through different suppliers. We're going through it now with future, powertrain applications. And I know the team works on that daily on, what's the best options that we have. And if we are looking to upgrade maybe that BMW motor at some point, we look at other manufacturers that might offer off-the-shelf type solutions that we could use as well.
So as a brand, you're now beginning to go obviously towards all electric. And when you do that, of course, charging infrastructure becomes even more and more important. So what are your plans there? Are you guys going to try and make your own infrastructure, or are you going to partner? I know Ford partnered with Electrify America, who are owned by the VW Group. So is there any kind of partnerships planned, or are you going to go down the route of making your own? Or
no, we're not going to go down the road of making our own. We will have some announcements, but I know we've talked with companies like ChargePoint, with Volta, with Electrify America, but we, have the universal plug. So, and I've even heard or read maybe that Tesla might open that up, or has opened it up kind of on a systematic basis to other OEMs to use their chargers at some point or in some locations. But no, we're not going to build our own network. I think the Volkswagen Electrify America thing, when they got their Dieselgate suit out, the plans to put $1 billion worth of charging infrastructure here in the US as part of that ruling, I think is going to take care of a lot of kind of range anxiety type things. And we feel like we have a benefit offering two different powertrains, depending on somebody's level of acceptance of an all electric vehicle and the range that they might want out of a car. If they do a lot of, long road trips every year, they may want to opt for that extended range with the, kind of the hybrid, the series hybrid application, because if that runs out of charge and runs down on fuel, you can just go to a gas station, fill it up, and you're off and running again. If they don't have a big commute or don't do that on a regular basis, we'll have an all electric version that's coming out. I think, with 300 plus miles of range, I think that's more than enough for your average daily driver. I mean, most people don't commute more than 30 miles a day to work and back. And if you go to the grocery store, it's a couple miles there too. So, how much range do you really need? Unless, again, you're going on a long road trip. So I think we've got both options for people depending on what their comfort level is.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think the average American drives 28 miles a day or something like that. So yeah.
I'd say they're 26 or 28. Yeah. It was a big deal when I worked at another company. We did a little 3-wheel commuter vehicle, and we had 100 miles of range. And that was one of the big things. Like, oh, it's not, it's because I ran the social media, and they chime in and say, oh, that's not enough range. It's only 100 miles. And I said, well, I'd always ask them, like, well, how far do you drive every day? And they'd be, 10 miles, 8 miles. It's like, okay, so what are we talking about? I mean, you can plug in your car at home overnight, and then a lot of workplaces have it now too, in the parking lots and at the airports and things like that. So it's like, so anyway.
Yeah. So I don't want to get off topic of Karma, but I have to ask you about the Electromechanica. It was the Solo, correct?
Yeah.
So could you mind just telling us a brief overview of that vehicle? Because some people know a little bit about it, but it's just kind of obscure.
Yeah, it's funny. At the same time, I was working contract basis. I did some work for Electromechanica when they were first starting up. I revealed their first vehicle about a year before Bollinger. And then when I went to Bollinger, I went from one side of the spectrum in electric vehicles to the other, a little 3-wheel, 1-seat electric car to a class 3, 10,000 gross vehicle weight, 4x4 off-roading behemoth like the Bollinger is. So doing both of them. But the Solo is interesting. It's, it's put together by a guy named Jerry Kroll, and he dueled up with a guy named Henry Reisner, who his dad started a company called Intermechanica. And Intermechanica started in Europe and then brought it over to San Bernardino here in California. And now they're up in Vancouver, but they are hand-built Porsche 356 Speedster replica makers, and really good. I mean, it's the detail and the quality is probably better than you would find on a real Porsche, because they put so much attention into the details, and people can come and pick out their fits and finishes and their carpets and their leathers and similar things. But they do a really, really extremely nice job. I mean, they've done Concours winning vehicles. They've competed in the Mille. And so when Jerry teamed up with Henry, it was like, well, you guys have the expertise in building vehicles. And Jerry brought with him from the NASA Research Park in San Francisco. He worked on a lot of the early Formula E race car battery and propulsion systems for the race cars. And he's a big Formula One gearhead guy. So he had that kind of battery propulsion expertise, and he had this idea of this single seat commuter vehicle, 3 wheels, and they started producing that in Vancouver, and again kind of called me out of the blue and said we need some help on getting the word out. And so we did the launch announcement for that car, like 4 or 5 years ago, and then we did the IPO a couple years ago. They IPO'd it at $3 or $4 a share, and it's been going up. So you're lucky if you had some stock in it about a year or so ago, because it's shot up with the rest of the electric vehicle market, like NIO and Tesla and everything else. It's kind of caught the wave. So it's a fun little car. Again, it's unique in a different way that the Karma is unique. You get a lot of looks and a lot of people wondering, like, what the heck is that? What the heck is that thing?
Did you drive it?
Kind of looks like a toy. Yeah, I had one here for about a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
So we'd give it out to celebrities for things. It's been in a couple TV shows and movies. It's kind of like a feature car. It was in X-Files with some alien segment that they had. But it's a fun little car, and it's got everything you need. I mean, if you just need a car to commute a few miles round trip to work and back and go to the grocery store, it had a 10 cubic inch trunk and 1 seat, 2 doors on each side. It's kind of weird, the driving position, because it just kind of feels strange to be in it. But anyway, it's a fun little car.
I can imagine the looks from it, because from the front you're like, okay, it looks kind of normal. Then when you go around the back, it's like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, I know. People say, oh, it's like half a car, but I mean, you can't. All the people worried about it tipping over or something, like, because it's 3 wheels. But it was, all the batteries are in the bottom of the car. So from a weight distribution standpoint, all the weight's in the bottom of it. So there's no roll. I mean, semi trucks tip over because they're top heavy. This car is, it's composite material vehicle. It's really light, and all the batteries, all the weight's in the bottom of it. So it's planted. It doesn't really go anywhere.
So just moving on now to like autonomy. I think you guys sent out a tweet a while back promising level 2 autonomy for
Mhm.
the GS6. So can you just tell us more about that and like what we can expect?
Yeah, it's like a level 2 plus autonomy. If you look at the technical classifications on what autonomy is, kind of, because of the new technologies have been added. They used to just have 1, 2, and 3. Now it's like a 1 plus and a 2, 2 plus and a 2 and a 3. So it's not fully autonomous. And I think our mantra kind of at the brand is we don't want to take away the driving experience from like pure driving enthusiasts that really still want to drive cars. I mean, there's a lot of talk about AI, obviously, and Tesla's done a lot of work, and other companies, NVIDIA and things like that, that are going that direction. We have kind of a level 2 plus where it's got lane departure assist. It's got the radar sensing for, what do you call it? For smart, what's the word I'm thinking of? Cruise
Adaptive
control.
cruise.
Yes, adaptive cruise control, ADAS. So, and then we have haptic sensors in the steering wheel, and you can dial that up or down depending on your level of comfort, or turn it completely off if you don't want it. But if you're wandering, it'll put you back in the lane. If you kind of get off to the side, and it'll correct you both actively and passively and haptically. So we've got a number of different sensors in the vehicle that kind of help with that, and it's makes it a lot easier to drive. My commute from Carlsbad up to Irvine is about 40 miles, but it's straight on the 5 freeway just up north. And I'll just click on the cruise control, and it'll kind of keep your distance from the cars in front of you and keep you in the right lane. And it's convenient. So I think it's all you really need. And if you want to drive the car, like you want to drive the car, you can turn all that off and have a lot of fun with it. So
Yeah, I think it's very important. I remember my dad has a 2016 Model S, and he was saying the AP1 on like which autopilot one, like it made such a difference because there's like one motorway between where I live in the South Cork and Dublin, and going up using that, it was like a dream coming from what he was in before. Like, so yeah. Really.
Yeah, I had a Chevy Bolt, and it didn't have that. You really miss it when you don't have it, when you get into another car that doesn't have that stuff. And even with the mirrors that'll, the blind side warning and things like that, I'll catch myself looking, when I'm driving the Bolt, and it's like, oh damn, like I wish I had.
You got a Bolt?
Yeah.
I drove a Bolt with a V.
Oh, do you?
We picked it up used. It's like a 2016. It's a pretty cool car. I like it a lot.
Yeah, my buddy has one of those. He swears by it. He put like a couple 100,000 miles on it. But he drives up to LA every day from San Diego, so it's a lot. But yeah, I've had a Bolt. And or I have one that I had before I joined Karma, and before that I bought a Fiat 500e.
Oh wow!
One of the
I drove one of those.
The first generation one. I loved it. I called it the Black Knight. It was black on black on black, kind of all murdered out, but it was a tiny little pocket rocket kind of a thing. Not much bigger than the Electromechanica, but I loved it. It was a fun little car. You could park it anywhere. And so, but I really enjoyed that car.
The new 500e is awesome. Like, I know you guys don't get it over in America, but it's some improvement. Like, you're talking cool. 200 miles of range, level 2 autonomy. The inside's really nice.
No kidding.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They've really they've elevated it so much from what it was. Like, yeah. I think a Fiat exec actually called it an urban Tesla. So.
Oh really?
Yeah, that's what he described it. So yeah, no, it's.
Yeah, we had. I had the 2014, like the first generation of it, and the battery degraded not too bad, but I mean, it started with 109 or 110 miles, I think, range, and it went down. When I got rid of it, it's probably down to like 79. You'd start the car up.
Way.
If you turn the air conditioning on, it would drop even further than that. So,
wow. Because I drove a used one. It was a 2014 with like 40,000 miles, and it was still showing. This was just last summer. It was still getting 101 on a full charge.
Was it really?
Yeah. So that one must have been. It was like 4,900 too, lightly used. Not a bad deal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I bought mine for like $5,000, $5,500 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it knew it was like 32 or something. Heck of a deal. Like the residual values are not great.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, we had a lot of, but I think I did it wrong too. I was charging it, full charge every night, and they say not to do that. So, but there was no way to turn it off. Like you couldn't just charge it to like 80%.
Yeah, you'd have to set up a timer or something.
Yeah, and wake up at midnight and go unplug the cable. So I was like, forget it.
So that actually reminds me of something to ask you a question about. So in my Chevy Volt, for example, you charge it to 100% all the time, but it's not at 100%. They have a buffer in there, so about 30%. And like in the Tesla, you can change it to, you can manually override it. How does that work in the Karma Revero GT? Does it automatically charge up, or is there a limit?
You can program it. It's interchangeable. You can charge it however much you want to, or less that you want to. You can set different timers in the. It's like the Bolt. I mean, it just, you can set it to whatever charge amount that you want to. You can set it to different times to start charging. Like here, the rates go down at midnight, so you'll set it to start charging at midnight, and then you get a full charge. It'll tell you when you get a full charge back on the vehicle at some whatever time. So yeah, you can manipulate it yourself.
So like
Okay.
with the full electric version now, do you have like any plans for like accessories like a wall box or some sort of stuff like that? Or
We have the charger that comes with the vehicle that's in the trunk.
oh right, yeah.
Yeah, we don't sell like Clipper Creek or anything like that. We don't sell our own like wall mount or 220 plug or anything like that. We just have the one that comes with it that plugs into the standard 110, and then it's got an adapter for 220.
Yeah, so on the topic of charging, I know the Revero GT is fast charge capable.
Mhm.
And I think that's pretty interesting for a plug-in hybrid. Is a normal Revero, does that also have fast charge capabilities?
Normal Revero, we've got the Revero GT pretty much, and then we've got the GS6, and they both use the same system.
The Revero GT, that's the base one now, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I meant the leftover 2019 Reveros, or 2018.
I'd have to look on the 2018. I know there were some changes. I'd have to look. I'm not sure right off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
And just onto the GS6. So I think it's a 110 kilowatt battery. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and interestingly, on your website for the 0 to 60, you have fast enough. So is there any kind of indication as what's defined as fast enough?
We did that because we're dialing it in right now. We didn't want to come out with a number that's not going to be real, because we're not starting production till later this year, so like October. But we have a number of test mules that are running around with different packs, different inverters, different options that we're kind of tweaking right now. So that's kind of why we're kind of cheeky with it on the website.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I think it's overhyped. Like for me, driving feel and such matters much more. I mean, I was in a Taycan 4S about 4 or 5 months back, and the 0 to 60 in that is 3.8, but it's a rocket. Like it's still, you don't need to be going any quicker. I think how the car handles, how it feels is much more important than the 0 to 60 alone.
Yeah, we think so too, but it's always a question, that you get from everybody. Like, what's a 0 to 6? That's just something that people default to when you're talking to them out, on the street or whatever in a parking lot, and it's like, oh, okay, because that's kind of, for the layperson, it's kind of like all they think. It's like, okay, 0 to 60 and range. Like, those are the two things they really seem to care about. But yeah, once you get in it and the driving, handling dynamics, the noise, vibration, that kind of stuff, the luxury, how the seats feel, the steering wheel, and we got a pretty massive steering wheel if you haven't been in the car, but it's substantial, but it's a lot of fun to drive. And I think that's more important than any 0 to 60 time. Although we do have like a launch mode. And if you do get a chance to get in it, I think Tesla's got a similar kind of a system. But if you put it in sport mode, we have 3 different driving modes. But if you put it in sport, which uses the motor and the battery system, and then put your foot on the brake and your foot on the gas, it'll go into this launch mode on the screen. It'll do like a little timer for you. So ideally, you're in kind of a track closed loop situation, and not on the streets. But it's a lot of fun to do it in a launch mode, and it'll do your 0 to 60 time, and it's got a track mode on it, so you can set it for where the start finish line is, and depending on what track that you're at, it'll remember that from the satellites on where you were, and then give you the lap times and things like that. So you can do some fun stuff with it, but ideally our car is not really set up for that as much as like a Porsche 911 or something that's like a real kind of a sports car. It's more kind of a grand tourer. So yeah, but it's there if you want to do it.
Yeah, but on that topic, I saw one video and I was just really impressed with the infotainment, like the graphics and everything. It looks very, for a startup company, it looks very nice, and all the I'm just trying to think, because like I heard there's like haptics in the like steering wheel buttons. Could you mind telling us about all the luxury features inside of it?
Yeah, there's even a video. We do kind of a walk around, a vehicle walk around with one of our dealer training guys, and he goes through all the little systems. I mean, it's way too. I mean, there's 3,000 different things that you can do in that system, and he knows all of them. But it would be a 5-hour presentation if he did every single one of them. But it'll give all the vehicle diagnostics. You said the haptic steering wheel, you can dial that up or down again depending on your comfort level. And some people find it intrusive, but some people, I like it. So it kind of lets you know if you're kind of wavering on the highway or whatever. But all that can be controlled a couple different ways, either on the main center screen that's between the passenger and the driver's seat. In front of the Prindle, and then it's also on the steering wheel, so it's kind of a double redundancy. So you can control the volume on the radio, you can control the HVAC system. It's got heated and cooled seats, a whole bunch of stuff that you can do, and then it's got all the vehicle diagnostic. It's got your range, your last trip. You can set different modes for driving on the steering wheel. It's got a tap up and tap down shifter. On the left hand side is for your driving modes. There's a stealth mode, which is just pure battery. There's a sport mode. And then there's a kind of a hybrid mode where both of them are working. And then on the other side, that's got kind of all the lane assist, the cruise control, all those kind of buttons are on the steering wheel there too. And it comes up on your screen where the speedometer is kind of in front of you. It also comes up on the screen that's down in the middle. So there's a number of different buttons and fun things you can do with it. But the information screens are kind of dualed up. So
Yeah, I must say, like, I think it must have been just when you came out with it, because it was like kind of August 2019 for the new Revero GT. Yeah, because I was first time I sat in one, I was over in Canada, and I checked it out, and yeah, I must say, like, it was such an improvement over the original Fisker Karma in terms of the entertainment setup and everying. It really did make a massive difference. So
yeah, I hadn't driven one until a couple of weeks ago, the original one, and they were like, "Oh, you gotta see," because I get questions like, "Is this any different?" Because it looks very similar to the original one, design wise, proportion wise, it is, but except for the front fascia and the rear fascia a little bit. But the driving and handling, the dynamics, God, the steering is super heavy. It's like driving a manual steering, without automatic steering. It's just night and day different. It's a lot heavier. It's like about 500 pounds heavier, the old version that they had, or the 1.0s. It's just a night and day difference when you drive them back to back, and the driving and the feel of the vehicle, and the infotainment system is a lot better. We've upgraded that. I think we're on like 4.0 now for that system. So they've done a lot of advancements, and the over-the-air updates that we can do, run all the diagnostics, get all the data. It's a lot more sophisticated than it was even a couple of years ago.
And just out of curiosity, so when you guys first took over from after Fisker Karma, after Fisker went bankrupt, so like when you got all those cars, did you make any changes before you sold them under the new brand name, or were they just rebranded as Karma?
I don't know the exact history. I think there was some carryover because they had vehicles that were being built already that were in process, and we inherited all the warranty claims for those original vehicles. We still service them today. So there were a few that were just straight carryover. And then when they did the rebranding, I think it took like a year or so, because they had to bring all the tooling and all the manufacturing stuff from overseas to set it up in our plant over here. So I know there was a downtime for a little bit, and during that time they kind of re-engineered a lot of it and reworked some of the really bad parts of it, and upgraded it so much as they could. And then, as you said, in 2019 they came out with kind of the Revero GT, which is basically the version that we have today, with a few enhancements just based on technology stuff. But yeah, I know they put a lot of effort into reworking and redesigning, the existing or the original vehicle. So
Yeah, so I think that's very interesting that Karma took over the maintenance for the Fisker Karmas. Would you mind discussing that and what happens for someone who still owns a 2012 Fisker?
Yeah, I mean, we still service them. So there's a warranty. I don't know if it was 10 years, maybe at the time, 8 or 10 years. So we're liable, responsible. I think it was probably something that was stated in the bankruptcy court when our parent company bought them out of it. That was just one of the stipulations. And I think it's illegal. It's like a regulatory thing in the United States that says that you have to do that. You're responsible for it. That's my guess. I don't know if that's actually, I'd have to talk to our legal team and find out what the stipulation was back then. But I'm not sure if we just did that on our own being benevolent, or if it was or if it was something that was stipulated by the bankruptcy courts and how you handle, automotive companies changing hands. So.
So I just have a bit of a side question, like going back, does the GS6 have any like sort of like V2G type thing where you can sell your power back to the grid or anything like that Lucid's talked about and Atlas and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd have to check with John on that to see if we do. I know it's in a couple presentations that we've had. I don't know if that's something that's being worked on or something that we have currently, but I've seen it before. I'd have to get back to you on if we have that existing right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Just a question.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyway, thanks so much, Jeff. I think it's coming on to the hour mark now. So we really appreciate your time and coming on. Yeah, it was a great interview.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It's always fun to do this stuff, and we need to create more brand awareness. So doing things like this, we've talked to a number of EV associations and other groups out here, local press associations. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.